I'm Steve Lusk with the Red Bank Church of Christ in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I'm here in one of our children's Sunday school classrooms because I'm going to be dealing with a somewhat difficult topic today. And I wanted to be here in this particular setting because the thing we're going to be talking about impacts our children, often in very profound ways. All this year, we've been looking at our My Family Daily Devotional Study Guide. We've been encouraging you to follow along as we read through various problems and helps and situations that affect our families. And we want to be helpful. And this week's topic is a very difficult one, and yet it's a very relevant one because the topic is helping our children through divorce. Now, in an ideal world, there would be no such thing as broken marriages. There'd be no such thing as problems in the home. There'd be no such things as children having to deal with these kinds of difficult circumstances. But the fact is, we don't live in an ideal world. We live in a broken world, and divorce is prevalent. Perhaps the trends are that divorce is not quite as prevalent as it was a few years ago. But the fact is that divorce is still a reality that so many of us face. And our author this week points out that divorce has a profound, sometimes even dramatic impact on our children. We might like to think, perhaps naively so, perhaps hopefully so, that sometimes divorce is best for children, but the fact remains that studies indicate that divorce is difficult for children, even under the best of circumstances. And our author offers some, I believe, good suggestions about things that we need to do. I would encourage you to read these lessons this week and to pick up on some of the things that he suggests, but I'd like to just highlight a couple of them. And let me first say, too, as we talk about this, that probably many of us have been impacted in some way or another by divorce. My wife, her parents were divorced when she was just a young girl. And though it was over 50 years ago, she still is impacted by the effects of that divorce as a grown adult, even a grandmother here today. And so we need to understand the far-reaching consequences of divorce on children. And perhaps if nothing else, one of the things that we can gain from this is let's do everything we can to strengthen our marriages and build them up and to avoid the negative impacts of divorce on not only the husband and the wife, but also on the children and the extended family. So a couple of things that our author suggests this week is this. One, he suggests honesty. You know, usually divorce happens because adults make mistakes. And it's easy to just sort of gloss over those things and to say to our children that, well, mommy and daddy just couldn't get along or this or that or the other. But let's be honest with our children. Let's be humble enough to admit that we have made mistakes, that we've messed up, that we've made some choices that may not have benefited the relationship, and it may have even contributed to the demise of the relationship. And let's ask for patience. Let's ask for forgiveness. Let's ask for help in those situations, even with our children, of course, in keeping with the things that are age appropriate for them to understand and to accept. So honesty is always the best policy. Not only does this have an impact on the immediate family, but honesty also is important in terms of how the church deals with divorce. We need to acknowledge, the scriptures say very clearly, confess your faults to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. There's something healing about confession and prayer. Even when a relationship maybe can't be put back together, then certainly the relationship with God and with brothers and sisters in Christ can be strengthened and restored. So let's be honest in these circumstances, that we make mistakes, that we need forgiveness, that we are humble enough to say, mommy, daddy, are wrong in these circumstances, and we failed, and we need you to be patient with us, and we need you to understand this. There's strength in that kind of admission. Another thing that is suggested is that parents, mom and dad who get a divorce, not put children sort of in the middle of that. There are going to be enough things that children have to deal with when mommy and daddy split up and go their separate ways as it is. But when one parent makes or forces, even manipulates a child to choose sides in a circumstance, it's not really fair to that child, nor is it fair to the other party. And so do all we can in those kinds of circumstances to avoid putting children in situations that there's just no win, there's no way out, that they are forced to choose sides. The fact remains that if mom and dad no longer want to be husband and wife, they're still mom and dad. And the child still recognizes that this is my dad, this is my mom, even if there are stepmothers and stepfathers that are involved in these circumstances. And we need to understand that, and we don't need to put children in the midst of all that any more than we absolutely have to. Now, I would just like to say, kind of as wrapping this up, and again, let me encourage you to read the lessons this week and pick up on the things that the author says that are good, that would be helpful. But as a church, as a congregation of God's people, as those who are trying to follow Jesus Christ, let's be restorative, let's be redemptive, let's be helpful, let's be forgiving, let's be patient in these kinds of situations, because that's exactly what Jesus would do. That's what Jesus did. Yes, there are consequences. There are consequences to bear when marriages fail, when adults make choices that lead to the demise of a relationship. But there is also the possibility of redemption. There's a possibility of forgiveness, and certainly the possibility of maintaining a right relationship with God. Let's work toward that. Let's be supportive of those who have gone through divorce, who have dealt with the difficult dilemmas that are faced when families are fractured by divorce. Let's be especially helpful to our children. And as a church family, that will not only bless and help those families, but ultimately, I believe it will honor and glorify God. We thank you so much for joining us each week for these My Family devotional discussions. Hope and pray that they're beneficial to you and helpful to you. And if there's any other way we can help you here at the Red Bank Church of Christ, we'd love to do so. Thank you so much for joining us today, and God bless.